Empyreal is an upcoming action RPG that you may have seen on the Steam Next Fest. It's described as complex, challenging, and feature-rich. It also has Souls-like elements and a very deep gear and combat system. I had a blast playing the demo, which launched during Next Fest and is still available to download today. And it's my pleasure to thank Silent Games and Secret Mode for sponsoring this video, where I'll be showing you some of the detailed and complex weapon systems, along with a few of the other features and mechanics in Empyreal. Let's start with a bit about the game. In the developer's own words, in a far-flung corner of the galaxy, an expedition arrives on a hitherto unexplored planet to find a colossal monolith built by a lost civilization. In the demo, you'll begin in a training arena where you can equip a weapon in each of the 3 primary categories, and you can try them all out against various enemies. You can then journey out through a portal and begin to uncover the secrets and dangers of the monolith. And the 3 weapon types that will be the focus of this video are the Glaive, the Cannon, and the Mace Shield. The game has genuinely a ton of other mechanics too, such as curios, armor sets, cartograms, consumables, treasures, and modifications, just to name a few. And I will touch on a few of these throughout the video, but I don't want to spoil everything before you've had a chance to play for yourself. So let's start by looking at what each of the weapon types has to offer you, so that you know which one you should start playing when you first jump in. Please note that just because you have selected a weapon, it doesn't mean you are locked into a particular playstyle. You can mix it up whenever you like by just visiting the hub and changing your weapon. Firstly, we'll take a look at the Mace Shield, because this is the one described as the most beginner friendly, and after playing all 3 types for a long period of time, I am inclined to agree. It has a well-rounded attack and a defensive playstyle. You also have an enhanced parry ability that redirects damage and grants a small barrier which absorbs incoming damage. Combat in Empyreal revolves around your abilities, which you see at the bottom right here. They are on very generous cooldowns and will form the majority of your damage in fights. These aren't the only abilities in the game. You can change up your abilities based on your equipment, your curios, and a few other factors. This is just the example build used in the demo. And my absolute favorite ability for the Mace Shield is the one tied to LT, which releases this big shockwave that strips enemies of their health. Honestly, it deals ridiculous amounts of damage. It's so cool. And this one even grants you a passive that will strip health away from enemies naturally whilst it isn't on cooldown. Things like perfect parrying and perfect guarding are in this game, but I will talk about them more when we cover the Glaive, because the Glaive's moveset heavily revolves around things like deflects and perfect dodges. Another really cool thing you can do if you opt to use the Mace Shield is this ability here tied to B. It will allow you to go invisible and get a guaranteed critical strike on an enemy, but what's even cooler is if you time it perfectly, it can be used to perfect dodge pretty much any attack in the game as well, along with granting other effects based on your armor and your other gear. You will also see that every class has an ultimate ability. This is charged up as you fight and deal damage, and you use it simply by pressing L3 and R3. And the ultimate ability of the Mace Shield spawns dozens of homing, exploding orbs that deal tremendous damage whilst looking really cool at the same time. As you can see, using the Mace Shield, I was able to absolutely destroy Alethea, the Heavenly Principle, and I really struggled against her with the other 2 weapons. I definitely feel like Mace Shield is the weapon for me. It definitely gelled with my playstyle the most, or maybe that's just because they're the most beginner friendly, and this game is complex. That's the highlights of the Mace Shield. Let me talk you through a few other mechanics before we look at the next weapon, the Glaive. You will see throughout all of my combat footage, I'm using lots and lots of consumables. You get many consumables in this game, and they form an absolutely crucial component in combat. They come in many different shapes and forms, from restoring health to applying elemental damage to your weapon. They are easily accessed via your inventory and then can be assigned to a quick slot of your choosing so that you can apply them in the heat of battle. And learning when best to use each consumable and taking full advantage of them can often be the difference between victory or defeat. Making sure you have plenty of health restoration and barrier restoration is absolutely crucial to surviving longer encounters. For instance, you may enter a room where the door will seal shut behind you, and you now have to fight off waves of enemies before you unlock the big juicy loot chest at the end of the room. And if you come in with only a couple of heals, chances are you might not make it through. And talking of that, what happens when you die? Empyreal at its core is a challenging game. It is meant to test you and challenge you and have that elation of triumph when you break through. And as such, each time you input a cartogram to visit a different section of the monolith, you will enter with a set amount of lives, and if you lose all of them lives, you are kicked back to the hub and you must try again. So make sure that every time you want to venture back through that portal, you are stocked, armed, and ready, because you will definitely need to be. Next up, let's talk about the Glaive. This weapon I want to be my favorite. I am best with the Mace Shield, but I love the idea of the Glaive. It has a much more acrobatic, offensive style, with many abilities actually being empowered by perfectly timed actions, such as deflecting and perfect dodges. This footage here fighting the sorcerer, trust me, I cannot stress enough how easy I'm making this fight look. You should have seen me absolutely sweating it out behind the screen. It's really hard to describe to you how much is going on the controller to make gameplay look this smooth. You really need to get good at this game, but when you do, my god, you feel so cool. So as you can see at the bottom right here, I'm using many of my abilities every time they come off cooldown, but also I'm having to think about my positioning. I'm having to watch out for AoEs, places where I should be standing, places where I shouldn't be standing. I'm having to use my items to keep myself healed, all the while making sure that I am hitting them perfect dodges. So pretty much every single time you see it pop up saying deflected on my character, that's because I have just hit another perfect dodge or perfect parry. And this fight may have looked incredibly easy and smooth and seamless, but what you aren't seeing is the 20 or so attempts to make the footage look this good. Because I really wanted it to, because I knew it could. I was fighting the sorcerer, and I thought, I can make this look so badass for the video. I just need to get good with the weapon first. So that's what I did. Because the Glaive is so fun to use that I wanted to be able to show off how stylish and easy you can make fights look, despite the fact that they are anything but, trust me. But in the best kind of way. You just need to give it a go yourself to be able to understand fully what I am blabbering on about. So just a very quick summary of a few of the Glaive's abilities. This Glaive specifically, as you see, has the electrocute status on it, which means I'm building up this electrocution meter on the boss, and when that is filled completely, he gets staggered, which will knock him out of some of his more powerful attacks. So I'm keeping on the pressure with my ultimate, with my RT, and then I'm jumping back in and keeping up the pressure as quickly as I can. And you'll see I'm actually using the same curio for the Glaive that I was for the Mace Shield, which is what controls the ability tied to Y on the controller. And this will see me jump up in the air and then slam down on the ground, dealing not too much damage, but the longer you hold the ability down for, the more buffs you gain and the more your damage increases. So this is very much a support ability that's going to enhance all of your other stats. There is honestly so much nuance to this game that goes on behind the scenes. And at first, because of the style of this demo, I was very intimidated, and I was just in the training arena and I thought, oh, I don't know if this is going to click, honestly. But I thought, you know what, let's just head off, let's go through a portal, let's try and do an actual mission. And when you're in these proper combat situations and you're not just messing about against a training dummy, that's when it all really started to click, and that's when I started to really see the fun and the appeal of this game. So if you're trying the demo and you get that feeling, go and do a mission. Don't just give up at the training, because in my opinion, it wasn't as fun. Playing through the actual missions, that's when it really shone, and that's when I started to have a really good time with this game. Two more mechanics I want to talk about before I show you the canon is enemy skill bars and cartograms. I'll start off with cartograms because I've mentioned them a few times already. So in Empyreal, cartograms are the levels that you play whilst exploring the monolith. They can be thought of as blueprints. And those of us who prefer to learn a game inside out and become very accustomed to even the most minute details and know the layout of levels back to front and upside down will be right at home, because luckily for you, these cartograms are not procedurally generated. They are in fact hand-authored for a much more curated touch. The cartogram you select will determine the loot available in each level and will add some random factors to diversify your playthrough and keep your journeys into the monolith feeling fresh and new each time. But the level designs themselves will stay the same, so you don't need to worry about getting lost. And the cartograms themselves are a physical item that you will carry with you in your inventory. They can be acquired from defeating enemies, and there are several on offer to try out in the demo, both for low levels and high levels, to give you a bit of a taste of the early game and the late game. And there's even an additional hidden one that offers an even greater challenge if you can find it. I unfortunately haven't found it yet, and I'm really excited to do so. So if you do find it, please let me know where you found it in the comments, because I really want to give it a go. And next up is enemy skill bars. Enemies will telegraph their attacks not only with their animations, but also by the skill bar that you see filling up above their heads, which will fill up just before they unleash an attack. And carefully paying attention to these two mechanics, both the animations and the skill bar, will not only allow you to get a sense of what their next action will be, but will also allow you to more easily learn which attack is coming up next, and therefore allow you to parry, deflect, or dodge accordingly. And as mentioned earlier, certain weapons and abilities are greatly enhanced after a perfectly timed deflect, dodge, or block, so you can use this to even further your advantage in combat, because you're gonna need it. And now for the cannon, the weapon I suck at. I've never been a ranged guy in video games. I really do like getting up close and personal, and the cannon is the most complex of the three weapons. It feels to me like it has not only the highest skill ceiling, but also the greatest potential because of the versatility and the range of this weapon. So firstly, straight off the bat, it has 3 different ammo types. So the cannon that I was using had a mini gun, like a rail gun, and a big explosive shot as well. And I've also been told that there are summonable constructs for the cannon to help you with engaging your enemies from a distance. So I'm assuming different variations and different equipment will unlock different skills. As long as your enemies aren't moving around too much, the cannon has some incredibly powerful targeted attacks that will pepper an area for seconds upon seconds, dealing loads of damage tick after tick after tick. But whilst you are in firing mode, you're very slow and you're very vulnerable, so you need to make sure you use your shields and your force fields and your barriers very carefully and don't leave yourself too exposed. There's a lot of nuance to this weapon, but I feel like you can absolutely demolish if you really take your time to learn it. The reload system's fun as well. It feels like a mini game in and of itself. So when you start to reload, if you hit the reload bar at the correct time, that is how you will change between the 3 ammo types. So the ammo types and the reload are all bound into the same button, so you don't have to remember like 2 or 3 different buttons just to reload and switch ammo. And just from this brief overview of Empyreal, hopefully you can start to see the array of playstyles and movesets and special abilities that are on offer to you to take full command of the battlefield when you play Empyreal. Oh, and I should have said as well, there are also finishers, so you can stagger enemies and then you can get up close and do a finisher, and some of these finishers look really damn cool. And with that, my friends, the last thing I would like to say is make sure you do go and wishlist Empyreal on Steam today by clicking the link in the description, and I will leave you to go and delve even further into the monolith, facing increasingly more lethal automatons as you try to discover the monolith's secrets. Thank you for watching, my friends. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.